Welcome to Macro Social Work Stories. Our guest today is Dr. Darlyne Bailey, Professor and Dean Emeritus of the Graduate School of Social Work and Social Research at Bryn Mawr College. Dr. Bailey is the Special Assistant to the College President for Community Partnerships, engaging, connecting with the community and college to bring about change. Dr. Bailey wears numerous hats, and one hat she wears is as the director of the Social Justice Initiative. Numerous facts about our guest. Our guest today is a first generational college student and among the first women to attend Lafayette College. Dr. Bailey has written numerous peer-reviewed articles, co-authored several books. We're delighted today to have a visionary leader on our show today. Welcome, Dr. Darlyne Bailey. Welcome, Dr. Bailey, to our podcast. And we're going to begin by saying, what drew you into macro social work?
Macro social work. Well, the path, I would love to say it was a straight line. I knew right away I wanted to be a macro practitioner, but that wouldn't be true. I went to Columbia University School of Social Work and dabbled around in groups classes, but really focused in on the clinical program there, what we used to call psychiatric social work. I did that, came out and worked in the clinical arena for quite some time, and then found myself gravitating towards starting a clinic, for example, for people that carried what I call the tag of schizophrenia, working with a nurse at that point to actually disprove that people that carry that tag can also work very effectively in individual one-on-one therapy, insight-oriented, and without psychotropic medication. That's not for everybody, but the people that I was able to work with went on, got PhDs, got married, everything that the textbooks at that point in time were saying was impossible. And as I realized that there was much more for me to learn about all of this, moved over to responding to a little ad that my mom had seen in the paper in the town in which I grew up. I was Harlem born and raised, though, in northern New Jersey, in Englewood, one of the first cities to desegregate schools. So they were looking for a partner to help start a community mental health organization. And in moving into that position there, my job there became one of crisis intervention, going out with the police and eventually covering over 1 million people in that area. When I discovered that my medical doctor was earning at least 4 times more than I would earn, I applied, got into medical school, but was seduced literally to go into a doctoral program at Case Western Reserve University in the Department of Organizational Behavior. The seduction lasted long enough for me to work my way through there. I loved it. It was awesome. And in doing that, when I came out, I was attracted and invited to go to business schools to teach on their faculty in the Department of Organizational Behavior. Shout out to the University of Virginia. And made a decision, though, to stick with social work. I mean, social work's a calling, right? It's in our blood. It's who we are. So I literally walked across the campus and worked with some phenomenal people there. A shout out to a lot of people, and most notably John Yankee and late Art Napperstack, in setting up and working on our macro concentration. I was also part of the Mandel School's Mandel Center, which was one of the first nonprofit certifying programs in the country. And I still miss Mort Mandel very much. Total visionary. So all of that put me on a path to focus on the larger systems, paying attention to individuals, obviously, right? And their families and small groups, but focusing in on the organizations and communities where they live to try to also influence policies to best serve them all. Long answer to your short question.
Yeah, so thank you. So that path, that journey that you took to where you are today, we can see moments, segments where labels, you talked about many times we label clients with diagnoses. And so those diagnoses, those labeling and how you partner with them, it prepared you to work in different atmospheres when you found out the inequities, the salary inequities with your position and other professionals that you were on the same team. And so all those different opportunities, that journey that you were a part of, prepared you
Right.
for the numerous things, the initiatives, the positions, the opportunities today. And so we can see the journey and how it pays off to know that social work is in our DNA. And we can do multiple things and as we go through the process. So thank you for sharing your journey. You talked about the initiative, the social justice initiative
Right.
that you are a part of. I believe it's called the
You got it. The Social Justice
Social
Initiative.
Justice Initiative. Yes.
Right. So I have to just go back one step though, Gary.
Okay.
Everything, my entire life has been around social justice.
Okay.
The way I was raised by my family, we're a multicultural family. My mom used to tell us we're a mixture of all God's good things.
Yes.
And we identify as African American. We're proud to be African American. And all of that comes into shaping who I am and why I am. Everything any of us have ever done, right,
Mm-hmm.
has brought us right here, right now, literally in this moment in time.
Yes.
So the Social Justice Initiative was an outgrowth of lots of different kinds of experiences of just sheer moments of joy, what I would say divine intervention, and some moments that were very challenging, and up close examples of inequities and mistruths. But as my mom said, I was born with the happy genes, so I just kept going. Okay.
Yeah.
So I stepped aside from academic administration, having served in multiple capacities as a dean, as a vice president provost, as an acting president, different types and sizes, an array of institutions, all the while believing that I wanted to be a president until I got to that fork in the road. And some of my students say, Darlyne was presented with a fork in the road and she took it. And that's exactly what happened. I was trying to weave things together and realized I loved what I was doing. This was at Teachers College, Columbia. So I stayed the path in terms of at that point being a vice president until invited out to be a dean elsewhere. When I stepped aside from all of that, that's over a quarter of a century of frankly being quite spoiled to be able to be at a position where you can have great influence in terms of a direction of a school, in terms of getting out there and trying to garner support. I love fundraising and friend raising. It's just part of how I love to show up in life.
Yes.
Some people would say that I make a good yenta, pulling people together. But the punchline for me was when I stepped aside, I didn't want to step into kind of nothing at risk of using a double negative. Shakespeare did, so I'm going to use it. And I said, okay, what do I want to do next? Because I became a dean 3 weeks after getting tenure, I'd never had really an opportunity to see what it was like to be a faculty member, and full professor.
Yes.
And so I also wanted to make certain that I was still listening to the call of what I believe I'm on the planet to do. So I started the Social Justice Initiative, and that was technically started in 2016. I stepped aside July 1st of 2017, and we had our big launch May 4th, 2017.
Okay.
So it's a culmination of everything I've ever done, and it's a gift. It truly is a gift.
Yes. So as we transition to ask our other co-hosts to ask questions, we know that you said your journey, your identity, your lived experience, where you were the first woman to enter Lafayette College. And how did that shape your experience?
Awesome. I will tell you, I've been the first since birth, having been the firstborn in my family. Even though my sister was walking and talking before I was. But the punchline is that I've been the first either woman or person of color, African American specifically, or Black as we call ourselves now. We've changed titles a lot over my lifetime. I think I'm older than you. So we've changed how we describe ourselves, and we embrace our Blackness now in a way that's just beautiful.
Yes.
I've been the first social worker, et cetera, and the youngest in most of the positions I've been in. So at Lafayette College, I wasn't the first woman. There were, I think, 11 women, women of color out of 2,000 students who were invited
Okay.
to be a part of Lafayette College back in the day. 9 of us stuck. It was a hard path,
Yeah.
hard journey, and I learned an awful lot about who I am, why I am, who I'm taking with me on this journey, who's taking me on the journey. And I learned very much about being able to stand in your truth and speak your truth.
Yeah. Speaking your truth. And so your journey where you have to speak your truth and stand in different positions where you were the first or among the first. What would you say to someone who's entering social work or someone who's first year in academia? How can they stand in their truth?
Wow. Okay. That's how can I say that short? I think what I would say is first and foremost, know yourself. And we talk about in social work, start where the client's at. And I would say you're the client. Okay. Start with yourself. You're the consumer going into social work as a student. You're the consumer graduating. You've got your degree. Worst thing you can do is think you can hang up a shingle right away. Okay. I remember my first client and saying, oh my gosh, you'd be so much better off if you had my supervisor. But enter into everything you do with a sense of humility and a sense of curiosity. And once you have a sense of who you are, also stay open and listen to all the other voices and opportunities that are out there, because there's a lesson to be learned in everything.
Mm.
All of that will help fine tune who you are, how you show up, and my language anyway, Gary, whose I am.
Yes, yes. Very important how we show up in that process. How we show up. Because many times you talked about labels, with labels, stereotypes. And so this weekend, there's a lot of different things going on this weekend in our society. We have a court hearing of the injustices going on in society. We also have some faith communities so celebrating our their process of their faith. Then we also have the assassination of Martin Luther King. All of these things are happening during our time period. And so when we look at your journey, have things really changed for people of color, for women? How much progress have we really begun as we reflect upon your time as as the dean emeritus, as a one who has gone through the journey as a clinician, integrate and work with multidisciplinary teams, have been a part of commissions, have started initiatives. How far have we actually become?
Wow, that's another great question. Have things really changed? I would have to say, and I know some people are going to disagree with me, but I would have to say yes. I would have to say that more people are awake now, more people are woke. Okay. And so we're paying closer attention to some of the issues that John Lewis, Martin Luther King Jr., I mean, we can name them, Audre Lorde, so many people who went before us went way too early,
Yes.
things that they've had to deal with. I would say that the core issues at the heart are the same, but things have changed because more people are awake. Now, I think the challenge, though, is the issue of how do we stay awake? Okay. We as a human species, we go to the fad of the time. Okay.
Yeah.
We go to, I mean, I would challenge some folks I would ask them what happened in Bangladesh. I remember growing up, we used to talk about Bangladesh. You don't hear that anymore. And does that mean that everything is right there? Far from it. Okay. At least by my definition of what's right in terms of equity and opportunities. So the issue for me is, yes, more people are awake. Yes, the issues are still persistent. The challenge is, how do we keep it going? How do we make certain that we don't regress back to where we were, even for us, 4 years ago? Okay. The conversation has changed a lot. We've been all shook up, but let's not let the lives of Breonna and Skylar and Walter and George and Trayvon, all of them, let them not be in vain. Okay. The women that were killed in Atlanta, In Colorado more recently, Columbine, Parkland. We think of all those young kids. I mean, let's not let all of those be in vain. Let us move forward in a way that's intentional and purposeful to sustain this movement towards social justice and equity, and in this case, racial equity.
Yes, yes. It's very important. We must continue to fight as we go through the journey. We may have individuals who are now come from the sidelines because of the pandemic. They have been exposed to the inequities that many people have been discussing and writing and addressing policy changes about. And so, yes, individuals have joined us in the fight for justice of gender issues, as well as other issues with our systems that we are a part of, systems where we work with juvenile delinquents, and how what we can do to stop the journey, the pipeline to prisons. And so it's very important. We do what we can to do that process. So my co-host.
The thing about sustaining, the thing I know for myself, as a white anti-racist practitioner in my adult life, is the thing you said. We have these things become fads too, where it's okay for a year or 2 years, but then we have to get back to the other serious work. And lo and behold, it gets dropped. So this time does seem different. I'm trying to hold on to its difference. I mean, it really is a moment in time. What do you think? What do we need to do to make sure that it is sustained? What do people have to do so that this doesn't become, oh yeah, we were doing that systemic racism thing back in 2021, but now it's fill in the blank. Because other issues will emerge. There will be other stuff in life.
Exactly.
And that doesn't mean, it doesn't mean we drop this. And yet, in my experience, as a white guy doing this work, it's always gotten dropped. So how do we sustain it? What do we need to do this time that could be different?
Well, I think we have to just keep showing up. And I think that what we need to do is to be even more intentional about reaching our hands back to folks that are younger, putting them right next to us and pushing them ahead. We need to do that very purposely. And I think that for too often, and I'm gonna put myself in the category, we all started thinking, well, we had to be the ones that would do it. And we're so busy doing it, we weren't thinking about cultivating and helping other folks join us in doing this work. I think we need to insert this into that conversation. So, for example, I think I mentioned to you at the very beginning, before we went live, that I've been blessed with an opportunity to be editor-in-chief of a small online journal. It's been around for a long time now, started by Sonia and Paul Abels, called Reflections, Narratives of Professional Practice. It's awesome. And one of the things that we're doing to make certain that this time doesn't disappear is not just have this one special issue on the topic, but to actually have what we're calling a trilogy of issues, so that over the course of this calendar year coming up, we'll continue to have issues coming out. And our editorial letters will continue to talk about, how we've done on the journey, even as a journal, contributing to this conversation. If people continue to talk about it, yeah, we get compassion fatigue. I know I can't watch TV a lot. I can't keep watching the tapes, the videos. It just starts to wear me down. And I go to a place of feeling hopeless and helpless until I remember that what I do have an opportunity to do. But if we can find a way to continue to keep this inserted throughout all of our conversations, prioritize issues around racial injustices and inequities, and continue to commit, and as I said before, reach back, pull forward, and push ahead, everyone with us, yeah, it'll stay in the forefront.
It's an interesting example you gave of what you're doing, because in the recent book I did on the end of social work, the chapter I did on racism and how social workers dealing with it, I looked at the social work journal from 1978 on. I took a particular sector of 3 months for every year to see what they did, and lo and behold, Between 1978 and 2008, there were like one every once in a while. Then in 2008, they had eight. They had like 8 articles in one month. They had 4 in another around racism, and that, I thought, wow. I guess when I get to 2009, 10, 11, it's going to look. It disappeared all over again, and it wasn't until 2018 that there was again
Resurrection.
a resurrection. So this consistency really does. It doesn't have to be everything, but it has to be something.
Exactly.
All the time.
So, Steve, I just have to do this again. Hold up your book.
No, okay. Okay, I appreciate that. There are 2 great women in that book. Well, of course, I give you kudos, but the chapter also highlights Dr. Barbara Solomon and Dr. Elaine Pinderhughes, who are 2 great champions of social work practice for all social workers. And yet, why are their names not considered along, Perlman and Coyle and all these other ones? Well, we white people have to look at what is it that happened to allow that to happen, because their work was absolutely groundbreaking and important for everyone.
Right. And Elaine, her daughter. I mean, we've got some incredible folks out there, and we need to look back. And most importantly, though, I would say we need to look where we are right now so that we can start to move ahead. That's a whole nother conversation about white fragility and guilt and all that as well. So I don't want us to get stuck there, because people stuck there can't move and do the work that needs to be done.
Right. Yeah. I wanted to ask one other thing, and Gary, I know you'll move us forward here. What is the social justice initiative doing concretely? What do you think has been important that you've been able to do, and how do you handle? Is there resistance or not? I'm not saying there is, but not everybody buys in the same way.
Exactly. So what are we doing? I'll just say a couple of things. Because I wanted to also share with you some of the things that I've learned by virtue of this, but I'll hold that and we'll see if we get to it, an opportunity to share that. But when we launched focused on one of what we call, and I say we, I have to say this, I have to give a shout out to my advisory council. Okay. I am very particular about language. Steve, you know that about me. I use words very purposely. And always have, but when I had an opportunity to meet this great man, Paulo Freire, over in Brazil, and I was just blessed with a friendship afterwards. I began to realize, as he says, the power of the word. Okay. So we need to be very clear about why we choose what words we choose. So in the idea of stepping aside and starting this thing called the Social Justice Initiative, purposely didn't call it a center, because then it would have had to go through a lot of different machinations in academia to be blessed as a center. But I also started this entity called the Advisory Council. And it's really a group of folks that are they rock, that give me advice, and I can ask questions and I can just show up as me and give me good counsel. So one of the good counsels was, Darlyne, you're easily attracted to a whole lot of things, like the kid that went into the barn and smelled horse poop, but I'm a big horse lover and owner, and started throwing up the stuff and saying, there's got to be a horse in here somewhere. So what they did, they said, you got to focus. We can't be all things to everybody and do it all well. So we created 4 that we thought were 4 essential pathways to getting to this thing called social justice. And one of them is forgiveness. The other kind of cheated, courage and compassion, putting the 2 together, as well as cultural humility, as well as what we call radical love. I live for the day when we don't have to put the word radical in front of the word love, but be that as it may, for right now, although anybody that's ever been with me knows I use the word love no matter what my position has been.
This is true.
So we started the launch with the first pathway that we thought was most important for everything, which was forgiveness. I have to give a shout out to another incredible human being on this planet who I was blessed to have met, spent time with in his home, and his wife, Joan, and daughters, Desmond Tutu. He and his daughter, Mfo, wrote this book called Forgiveness, Fourfold. And long story made short, we did this launch on forgiveness, and we looked at it through the individual, no surprise, right? With my own micro macro kind of background. Only in academia do we make this crazy division, but the individual lens, taking a look at it through an organizational lens, and then looking at it as well through a policy community lens. And when we started that, I was just hopeful that 50 people would show up. And I said, okay, maybe 80. Well, 350 people showed up. It was awesome. And they stayed for 8 hours, which is even more incredible. And that started us on the path of saying, well, maybe we are doing something right. Maybe there's a need for a space, even though social justice and social work, to me, are one and the same, right? Maybe there is a need to make it more explicit and to step out in this way. And I would tell you that when I first suggested this, as I said, I was the dean then, I had faculty say, well, what does that have to do with us? How does this work? And one of my faculty colleagues said, well, yeah, why don't you go start this? You know, you're very entrepreneurial. Why don't you start this on the side of the school? And so an honest answer to your question would be that the biggest kudos have come from the outside, okay, outside of the school, outside of even the college initially. People saying this fit a niche. And I'll tell you what we're doing concretely, to use your word now, which is using forgiveness, but it's moved in a slightly different place with that construct and process. And then, okay, it started, people said, we've got to pay attention to this. Something's happening. And believe it or not, she's bringing the school and the college everywhere. That's where I'm at, right? They come with me, I go with them. So we've got now an incredible following of students, other faculty, even outside of our school, and a growing number of faculty inside of our school. Staff have been there all along. So it's been an incredible, incredible journey. If you build it, they will come. If you build it right and they see how they fit into it, then they will come. What we're doing concretely right now is working with youth advocacy programs, and we're on our 4th virtual panel focusing on hopefully a big movement with a lot of help from people in other states to close youth prisons.
That's very important.
Yeah, I have some students who are working on that here in New York.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
Gary, you want to bring us home?
Yes. I want to thank you, Dr. Bailey, for joining us to share your story, share your journey, share how your beginning, your family, your identity, all assisted in the different positions, opportunities, and initiatives that you took. You didn't wait for approval to begin the journey of making sure that the rights, that equality took place for all of humanity. Those values of social worker. As a social worker, you demonstrate that on different levels. So we thank you. And we appreciate your service. We appreciate the opportunities you've given to new social workers like myself who have entered the academic space, where we understand that we have to stand in our truth. And so thank you for the example. Thank you for the first and not saying that I'm the first or I'm among the first. And so you're making sure that others come after you.
Absolutely. It's
Very
no big
important.
deal. I mean, it's big in a big way to be first, but it's horrible to be the last. Okay. Yes. So you got to make certain that doesn't happen.
Well, thank you. Yes. Any final words you have for our viewers?
Yes. I alluded to it earlier. I would just say that there are just a couple of key things to remember in terms of lessons learned, because I really started to think about that in preparation for just being with you all. If you want to start an initiative, think about it as what it really is. It doesn't matter so much what the initiative is, but look at it as an organizational change. And in thinking about it as an organizational change, there are lots of models out there that can help you move. John Cotter talks about, get your coalition in place. Okay. I'm going to move away from John Cotter just for a moment and say, be intentional about the timing. Be intentional about whether you want to start out immediately with the idea or you want to get some traction. If you want to be on the radar screen, be off the radar screen. Be mindful of all the one action causes a reaction kind of thing. Also, the other piece that I would say is to expect and then to listen to the resistance you're going to get. Organizational change of any kind, even when people like it, they can resist it, right? So know that in that resistance, there's a reason for that. So respect, again, using words, look again, respect the resistance that you get and learn from them, use them as opportunities to continue to move forward with your initiative. And I would say what I did was I felt like I needed to launch big and bold. And in doing that, I took a risk, but it was a calculated risk. It wasn't a gamble. So stand in your truth, continue to grow, continue to constantly learn. I'm thinking of the palm trees, the bamboo, okay, that kind of go with flexible, but the roots stay steady in the soil. So speak up, move up, stay connected with others. Couldn't do this by ourselves, ever, ever, ever. Co-labor with kindred others. Be prepared to meet with others that aren't kindred initially and just keep talking. And the wisdom of the way will shine the light on the truth. So I'm trying to say a whole lot at one time.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Bailey.
Thank you so much.
Your wisdom.
Oh, thank you.
Expect resistance. Expect resistance. Thank you. All right.
Good trouble. Make good trouble, right? John Lewis, thank you.
Yes, good trouble.